on WPG Talk Radio 104.1.
Thank you very much. 5 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Halftime was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And thanks to Congressman Loviando for a great episode, a special edition, early in the morning edition of Ask the Congressman. Now in his 26th year as the official financial advisor, it's my privilege to welcome Chuck Malamut, the managing director. He leads his team, the Malamut Group, at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office. The following program, you can reach Chuck and his team at 609-383-2010. That's 609-383-2010 for all of your financial planning needs. And you'll learn, as I did more than 3 decades ago, because Chuck's time in the financial services industry predates my time in radio. I learned a long, long time ago about Chuck's perfected concept of total asset management coupled with the all-important asset allocation. And the following program that you will listen to is presented by Chuck, who is a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this program are those of Chuck and do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast, subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, member SIPC. And, Chuck, we begin the program with breaking news because for the first time since 1987, and I gave this some thought, President Reagan was in office. My oldest daughter was just 4 years old by a few weeks, not even, actually by 6 days. My middle daughter was only 11 months old. She's now 31. Kristen's now 34. And our son, Robert, was 2 years away from being born. So just to give people an idea of something that has not happened since that long ago, a generation ago, the Dow has 12 record closings, the longest streak since 1987. We begin the program there, if you don't mind, Chuck.
Good morning, Harry. The market certainly seems to be pretty remarkable at this point in time. Every day that we open up lower, by the end of the day, we end up with some sort of what I'll call a mini rally, perhaps, to get us, just above where we ended the previous day. So now, what has happened is, if you take a look, last week the S&P was up 0.7%, fifth consecutive week of gains. The Dow, as you mentioned, had now 12 straight days of gains. Treasuries rallied, yields moved lower, and that's kind of a concern here, Harry, because is it really the equity market or is it the bond market that's sort of leading us into what we think will be happening in the future? So earnings right now, we're getting towards the tail end. And unfortunately, I don't know if you saw, Harry, but this morning, pretty big miss by Target.
I did see that.
They missed revenue, they missed EPS, and I think probably the most discouraging thing that I read very, very quickly was the fact that their forward-looking statement, they basically revised downward their estimates for 2017. Holiday sales they missed, and again, Target's sort of a staple, and that consumers, that consumer discretionary area, consumers, where it's obviously it's considered a retailer in its format, but you kind of look at the chain, so to speak, like where individuals shop, and the fact of the matter is that a miss is a miss, and I know that we don't talk about any particular company, but the reason I wanted to bring that up, everyone seems to think that the Fed is going to make a move in March. I'm not quite certain that that's going to be happening.
I am.
Okay.
But see, there's the difference, though. I should be feeling like you are, because your sobering assessment is not based on the lane that I operate in, which is the political lane. anybody who doesn't agree with this, you're entitled to your opinion. But I've watched this my entire broadcasting career, which is almost now 3 decades, and also before that, and that Fed chairs and Federal Reserve boards are very, very willing to raise interest rates when a Republican is president. And I've been right on every one of my predictions. I'm going to predict they will raise. It may be small, in that probably no more than half-point range, maybe even a quarter of a point. They will raise interest rates because they're happy to do so because of their politics. I really believe that. Chuck, before we go further with your market report and all the great information that you're going to bring this hour, which includes, is inflation on the rise, interest rates, is there confidence in the Trump tax reform, the Greek bailout deadline, and where that stands, I want to give you an opportunity. You and I each I considered it a privilege to go to the Harrah's Convention Center. First time I had been there with the facility fully complete. I did get a tour before it opened. And we both had important roles with that wonderful group of students from DECA. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to comment about your time there.
Harry, I really had no idea what to expect other than, arriving and being assigned a judge. And there were, I would say, Harry, oh my goodness, I'd say 100 plus judges, maybe even more, because there were 55 different areas where these students were presenting. And I had the privilege of working in what I'll call the accounting side. There were 6 judges. And so here's what happened with our group. And I think it's probably pretty consistent throughout the rest of the convention. Students go through DECA, and Harry, you probably know more about the organization than I do, certainly. But they get through what they call regionals, and then if they get through regionals, they end up coming to Atlantic City, and there were thousands. I'm going to say, Harry, there had to be 3,000 people there because it was spread throughout the entire convention center, which as you've indicated, it's a wonderful facility. So imagine they bring in 6 students, and they give them a problem to solve and a role play that they have to fulfill, and they have 10 minutes to prepare. And after they're done preparing, they present to a judge, and that judge ends up scoring them with anywhere from what I'll say a 40 to like a 90, and then those students have an opportunity to represent another role play later in the day to a different judge. And then ultimately the points are tallied and scored. And I guess, Harry, the highest point totals move on to what I guess is the finalists. I mean, think about it. I mean, if I gave you that assignment, you'd probably be under a fair amount of pressure to get that accomplished. Harry, listen, you have 10 minutes to get ready for your show. And here's what you're going to talk about. So go. Yeah. And that's all you get. And
which means they have to be well versed to begin with. Really,
they do. And what happened was I had 2 young women that presented first, and they were absolutely awesome. And I said, wow, this is just going to be a wonderful day because they both hit it on all cylinders. And I said, you nailed the presentation. Now, at the very end, you're not supposed to say anything other than thank you. But, I mean, you have to – look, you can say thank you very much. You did a great job. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The next 3 were subpar. And then that kind of evened the score, so to speak. And then as we got through the rest of the day, you had some very, very spectacular presenters. And then you had some that just weren't – either they were under a tremendous amount of pressure. They couldn't present. I remember, Harry, there was one – student that was just so frantic, and she tried to present, and she got very, very nervous. And I said to her, look, do me a favor, you have plenty of time to present. Why don't you just go back out for a few minutes, try to compose yourself, go to the restroom, get a drink of water. We're here. You're not pressed for time. Don't worry about it. And she looked at me. I thought the poor girl was going to cry.
You gave her just a little bit of breathing space.
But she went back out. She got her act together and came back and just nailed it. So, and these are kids, Harry. I mean, they are they're young adults. I mean, they're sophomores, juniors, seniors in high school.
Yeah, and here's the other reality, Chuck. Public speaking is basically the number one phobia in the United States. People, generally speaking, are very nervous about getting up. It doesn't have to be a huge crowd, getting up in front of anyone to speak. And I can appreciate that because we had a thing when I was a grade school student called storytelling. And you knew it years before you got to that grade, eighth grade, you knew you were going to have to get up in front of the whole school. It was, oh my gosh, it wasn't just the whole eighth grade. It was the whole school came into the auditorium. And I'm telling you, people wouldn't believe this, but I had to work very hard. I believe, sort of innately an introvert. I'm very, very introverted. Now I'm an extrovert because of my job. I have to be now, and I forget about my introverted days. Chuck, I was terrified. I did a terrible job. I got out alive. I don't remember getting any type of distinguished grade, maybe struggled to get a B, but you got graded, and you had to do it in front of all your peers and the whole school. It's nerve-wracking public speaking. So I always, whenever I'm doing this type of assignment, my assignment here was a little bit different, but I've done this type of assignment too in the past. I had a great communications seminar that I just loved being a small part of, and it was wonderful. But I always give sort of that deference to how nervous people get when they're doing public speaking, Chuck.
Harry, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I have done a fair amount of public speaking, and it's the worst time is the first time, and if you don't have butterflies in your stomach and you're not a little bit on edge every time you do it, then I don't think you're ready. You're going to do a good job.
It's true.
Yeah. But in any case, I was truly impressed, and very, very pleased to spend the day there. We were so busy, we didn't have an opportunity to have lunch. They brought you a box lunch.
Yeah, it's great.
But it was all good, all good.
And I had a great time too. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I shared my thoughts the next on-air day, but this is the first time we've had the opportunity with Chuck, who participated. Jim Fraser did a great job, and there were some other really great community leaders that stepped up. They needed a lot of really experienced people to be able to serve as judges, so it was very, very good. And they told me, just got a text message, they're very thankful that you were there.
Well, good. We'll do it. Hopefully we'll be invited. I don't know.
I know that the program is observing Chuck, so will Chuck be invited again? Please, we're going to go to break. Text me during the break. I'll let everybody know in just about 3.5 minutes when we come back. One more power segment with Chuck, actually two, but one more, and then Joe Piscopo will join us. I'm going to ask him in a 4-minute mini extravaganza, because he'll be taking a break from his show to come into our studio. Joe has been with us. We chatted this morning and had some nice quality time together in the 5 o'clock hour. Joe is one studio away from us right now. About 6 inches of sound insulation separate the two programs. For the pride of 970, The Answer, Joe Piscopo, and yours truly, the mayor of the morning, Hurley in the Morning, we're going to pose the definitive question to Joe Piscopo. Then Chuck will continue. Then at 8:50, I will break major news, a Hurley in the Morning exclusive about the race for Atlanta County Sheriff. And then we will have Dr. Newkirk from 9:05 to 9:35. And then at 9:40, we will have still more breaking news involving the race for Atlanta County Sheriff. And the second part of the breaking news is unrelated to the first part of the breaking news, but it all is related insofar as it will have a direct impact, I believe, on Decision 2017 and who may be the next sheriff of Atlantic County. Back with Chuck Malamut in just a few minutes. Hey, thanks very much. Welcome back. 23 minutes past the hour. It's the official financial advisor for the Hurley in the Morning program, Hurley in the Morning Charity Foundation et al., and hopefully for you and yours, because you will be in very good hands with Chuck and his team. Chuck, please continue your market update. Thanks for the update on DECA.
Sure, Harry. So we only briefly touched on the fact that the market, has made these remarkable moves, it seems like day after day, week after week. And I guess the concern that we all should have here is not to get too terribly complacent, because what happens when people become complacent, especially in the markets. They're going to be taken by surprise. But if you look at the markets, Harry, you have sentiment that has been very, very positive. Had improving fundamentals. We did talk about, we looked at one company today that missed, and there could be concerns in that particular space. But, the improving fundamentals, the sentiment have both contributed to the run-up that we've had, in equities. Now, again, business-friendly policies. Can this new administration, in fact, enact these business-friendly policies, or are they going to be stonewalled, from the other side? So, if you think about it, the rally that was put in shortly after the election, or as the day or two after the election, the old word of animal spirits, they all kind of jumped in and participated. They wanted to get in equities at that point in time. Now, we talked briefly about the Fed. They still, to this day, I mean, you might disagree with me, they still are somewhat accommodative. The market gauges a rate increase at the next meeting in March as rather unlikely. Okay. So you're kind of going against the grain here. Yeah. But you've been right before.
I went against the grain before, but it was so likely.
And so I'm really curious to see,
Chuck,
to see what happens.
Let me explain. Here's all I'm basing it on. Even if there was a Republican president that wasn't Trump, I wouldn't say this. There is such a zeal to stick it to Trump at every turn that I am sort of, a very dear friend of mine in one part of his life is known as the contrarian. I am being the contrarian because I believe that there is a desire to stick it to President Trump more than to do the right thing. As crazy as that sounds.
No, Harry, I won't necessarily disagree with you, but the other thing with respect to what's happening in the market, we kind of talked about this it seems like we talk about it a lot, and that's, what's happening or what has happened, with earnings. So fourth quarter is, we're pretty much coming to an end. All the data that we have seen so far, I mean, today, sort of an outlier, I guess. The earnings recession that we went through is now behind us. The new policy specifics that are out there, are uncertain at best, and the timing and the details of those specifics and the implementation could create a fair amount of market volatility. We have not talked about geopolitical risks, it seems like, Harry, in quite some time. So, it could become a reality that, tax reform, healthcare reform, throw it out, start it over, repeal and replace. I mean, these are very, very daunting tasks, and I am not presenting this as being terribly negative. I'm not. We are both very, very positive, but I'm just suggesting that I think we just have to be a little careful here. I mean, it's going to take some time.
Chuck, 2-minute drill, then we're going to break, then we're going to come back with my good friend Joe Piscopo. I'm going to ask him a few questions, real brief, in a 4-minute mini appearance. Then we'll come right back to Chuck, and we will continue the Chuck Malamut program. Chuck, 2-minute comment, and if you need more time, you'll get it right after Joe's appearance, because he's going to be here at 8:35. Global inflation.
Yeah. So Harry, we're now shifting. It's pretty evident we're shifting from deflation to reflation at this point in time, and the trend started, as we got into the middle of last year, and it virtually accelerated after our election. So, consumer prices are going to increase in many markets. The pending fiscal stimulus around the world, more so outside of here than here in the U.S., should contribute to some broader inflationary pressures. We talk, every month we talk about jobless claims. We talk about unemployment report. We talk about wage increases, and wage increases, continue. And I think year over year was up maybe 3 to 3.5%, if my memory serves me correctly. But that all contributes to potential inflation down the road. So I think that the inflationary trends, and you kind of mentioned it, on more than one occasion what's happened, in the UK with Brexit. The fact of the matter is that it's not such a bad thing.
Turned out very well, like Conover and yours truly said.
But I'm saying that a little inflation is actually okay if it's in fact for all the right reasons. So I'm thinking that on a go-forward basis, don't be at all surprised, Harry, if in fact we see that.
Thank you very much. We're approaching the bottom of the hour. When we come back, if all goes well, my fingers are crossed, he only has to walk about 10 feet. My good friend Joe Piscopo, and we will ask him, is he ready to announce? Is he ready to feed a couple of breadcrumbs to his brother Harry Hurley in the morning, whether or not he will be running for governor of the great state of New Jersey? Wouldn't it be great? Oh my gosh, we would go international with that scoop. Let's see what happens. All I can do is ask. We'll see what develops when we come back in just 4 minutes or so. Chuck knows that Joe may walk in at any moment. It's 35 minutes, almost 36 minutes past the hour. It's the Chuck Malamut program on Hurley in the Morning every Tuesday morning in the 8 o'clock hour. Let's talk about interest rates.
Yeah, so, Harry, I'm a little conflicted here because, as we mentioned before the break, that the Fed, there's a possibility or that they may not make a move in March. But sort of, if you take a look right now, think about this. That last summer, the 10-year that we use as a barometer was at 1.37%. After the election, it spiked to that 255, 260 range, and is now back in that, it's roughly like 2.30, I believe, somewhere like that. Very, very, very close. But the expectation is that, we probably hit that secular low in the summer. And in all likelihood, we expect moves in that market to go higher. But it's not, it's going to be done on an as-needed basis. And the market, it's whether it's the bond market, is it the bond market controlling the future? Does the bond market understand the future of our economy, or is it in fact the stock market? Because they are in fact signaling two different things here.
How about economic confidence? How's that going?
So, Harry, as we kind of talked about, previously, we need some clarity with respect to tax reform, all the regulations that are out there that are being repealed and replaced. But we do expect a fair amount of uncertainty with respect to the economy as we move forward here. So, higher interest rates, we just kind of talked about. A rising U.S. dollar could also be negative for our economy. You look at that old adage, imports versus exports. And, that could very well happen over time. As we kind of mentioned before, while inflation currently is not a problem, it could begin to slow some economic global growth, in the upcoming future years.
You good, Joe? Yeah. Come on, say hi real quick. Yeah.
So, Harry, I think we're going to take a little break here for a second.
We're not going to leave the air. Hey, Joe, tell me, when do you have to get back to your show?
Right now. They have a spot coming up, but okay. I said Harry Hurley called, so I came a-running.
All right, so here's the question.
Yes, sir.
We'll catch up when you have more time.
Okay.
It's amazing. We have more time when we're not 5 feet away. That's just life. But people want to know, Brother Harry would love to know, are you ready to just make my broadcast week? Get me in every newspaper and television outlet in the world and radio station because it writes that the famous Joe Piscopo announced on Hurley in the Morning that he's running for governor of New Jersey. Do you want to make my career? Do you want my wife and kids to eat?
Harry, I love you. I can't say anything. The election laws are such that once you say something, everything kicks in. The committee things kick in. The political action committee kicks in, and then I'm not even allowed to be on the radio anymore.
We have the only job in the world where some jobs you get paid to run.
I
basically.
Know. But I promise you, and you always are front and center. And where did it start? At Congress Hall.
Yeah.
Mr. Harry Hurley. Where did that start? It started with you. That was last April.
Do you know? You can't say today, but do you know whether you're doing it?
You know what? This is more serious than anything I've ever done in my life. People come up only because people are so upset with lifetime career politicians. It's time to take it back. It's our time, Harry. That's what I'm feeling.
We'll catch up real soon, my friend.
Right, I love you, man.
Good to see you. Back at you. Love you back. Joe Piscopo. Chuck, time is yours. We've got about 5 minutes or so left in your program. Then we have breaking news on the Atlanta County Sheriff's race. Then we have Dr. Newkirk for half of the 9 o'clock hour. And then, my friends, we have even more breaking news. A very, very definitive, groundbreaking day here on Early in the Morning. And, Chuck, thanks for making room for a great friend and a great star, Joe Piscopo.
So I guess that maybe any day now we'll find
Chuck,
out.
I tried hard, didn't I?
You did, Harry. But he was
every trick in my bag.
Well dressed. But I think if you had another 3 or 4 minutes, this sweat would have been starting to come off the brow. And
he raises a good point, though, and I know it all too well. In our business, if you make an announcement that you're a declared candidate for dog catcher, for school board, you literally have to leave your program. We have the one job, I think, in America where, look, senators can run for anything while they're a senator. Union people get paid to take leave to be able to run. It's really unbelievable what, but in our industry, if we declare, we're out.
Point very well taken. I think what Joe said, and we're not, this hour is not political. We always kind of talk about that. But the fact is, it's time to, take everything back, is to sort of eliminate those career politicians and do what's right. And that's obviously that was said back in November, with our president. So it's I guess if I was predicting, I'm going to say he's going to throw it. I say he's going to run. How do you like that?
I think let's put it this way. I can't say certain things, but let's just say I would not be surprised if Joe Piscopo runs for governor of New Jersey this election year in the Republican primary.
So Harry, one of the things that we chatted about at the beginning, the stock market's saying one thing, and the bond market is saying something a little bit different here. So the investor, it causes some confusion. So let's think about this for a minute. Equities have been moving on an onward basis based on expectations of stronger economic growth. And that's pretty much out there. You're hearing companies are, hiring more people, creating not only jobs but building plants in the U.S. Bond yields in the interim, you would expect that bond yields would increase, but they have in fact been falling and seem priced for maybe we'll call stagnation. So the question here is who was right? The economic environment that we're in right now is going to get more complicated. It has to be. If you look at what's happening on a day-by-day basis, it is very, very confusing.
And I know you never get hung up on any one indice or, any one moment because, your career is measured in multiple decades. So you don't get excited about any 12 days, but you also pay attention. Is this kind of amazing, though, that for the first time in a generation since 1987 – so we've had since then what? We've had President George H.W. Bush, 2 terms of President George W. Bush, of Bill Clinton, rather, 2 terms of George W. Bush, 2 terms of Barack Obama, and the first 50 days or 40-some days of the 45th President of the United States since we've had 12 consecutive days of the Dow setting records. That's a streak that's not meaningless.
Harry, here's what's interesting. And I think this is where we become confident that the moves that we're seeing now are not those violent moves upward, and certainly they have not been. I think I heard. I don't want to misquote this. We've only had one day with a movement of 1% downward since the third quarter.
All right. So in our final minute, that's amazing, Chuck, what you just said. In our final minute, because we have breaking news coming up after the break, and I got to go, and you have to go. Equities versus fixed income. Yeah, so the Fed, as we mentioned, they're going to initiate that tightening policy. We think it's going to be slow. They're obviously concerned about inflation, Harry, as well. So consumer spending, business investment are increasing. Which is going to be positive for near-term, economic growth. So the challenge that all of us have right now, is not only what's happening here domestically, but what's happening internationally. Global equity markets right now are more expensive than they were several years ago. You mentioned with Kirk about what's happened with Brexit. We think they're fairly valued at this point in time. Government bond yields are going to probably increase as well. So bond prices might be a little bit here at risk.
And, short-term rates, as we've talked about for years, mean cash offers virtually no returns.
30 seconds. Kirk has a question that he sent me a while ago, and I told him we were just having such a busy day that even I am having trouble multitasking today's incredible program. I could take a few days off the program, and this should just run again, and I could just go away to Disney World for a few days. It's been so impactful, and we haven't even gotten to some of our breaking news yet. But Kirk writes in, what sectors of the market will benefit from the president's deregulation plans? I think that's a really good question.
No, it is. So we've talked about banks, financials. We've talked about aerospace and defense, U.S. infrastructure, technology. Healthcare is kind of the wild card because every day it seems to change. Yeah. So I'm going to probably put that in the maybe category, but for sure. And energy as well. So those are 4 to 5 sectors that we believe will do well over the next couple of years. Great question.
It is a really great question. If you've been listening to the last 40 minutes, you understand why Chuck Malamut is the official financial advisor, exclusive financial advisor for the Hurley in the Morning program for 26 years now. Chuck and his team, he's the managing director of his team, the Malamut Group, at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office, 609-383-2010, for all of your financial planning needs. And if you think that you're not in a situation where you need someone like Chuck, think about this. Do you have children? Have you prepared for college? Are they young? And this is when you want to do it so that it is not some kind of nightmare, so that you don't become, and Chuck and I are going to talk about this in a future Malamut program, so you don't become part of the $1.3 trillion of student loan debt. And it is wreaking havoc and giving people like a whole nother mortgage payment. And there's only so much forbearance that you get. That 3 years goes away very, very quickly. And then for the next 60 years, how do you do? So a lot to talk about relative to that. Chuck, thanks for a wonderful show.
Harry, thanks for having me. See you next week.
Breaking news, kids. It's what we do. 1 hour at a time. As the mayor of the morning in the People's City Hall, the most relevant two-way talk radio broadcast in New Jersey history right here. It should be Dr. Kesselman. Are you listening? President Kesselman and other distinguished education leaders. This should be a multi-credit course. Each hour of the program should be a 4-credit course. We'll be back. Breaking news. The Atlantic County Sheriff's race. News that only we have.